So I am 22 years old. I don't have much knowledge about finances and stuff as I still live at home as I'm at university. I do however pay my parents about £300 a month rent, I pay my own phone plan, buy material stuff I want or need, pay out for other services like for music or whatever, and try to put as much as I can in savings whilst still keeping enough in my main account for day-to-day purchases. Currently, I am saving up for driving lessons and hope that if I pass decently, I can use some of my savings towards getting a car. I'm in my final year of uni, so I'll be done and able to work full-time when all this happens. I also decided to get a credit card so I can learn how to manage credit wisely and build some up. My credit score is good for someone of my age and circumstance, but obviously it's nothing great in comparison for other stuff. I should point out that at most I only plan on using this card with a total adding up to £100. I've stuck to that so far and only actually used it twice, with these purchases only adding up to £80, and I paid it off quickly. I do not plan on exceeding my limit anytime soon, as I've heard far too many horror stories of people just using their credit card too much cause it was handy and getting into debt. The only people I disclose this to was my dad, as my mom has the tendency to blab to my brother and sister-in-law, both 28. She happened to overhear us talking one day, and before I knew it, my brother and sister-in-law got wind and asked me if they could use it. They both admitted they had debt spurred on by excessive credit card use and thought that since I basically had nothing owed on mine, it was free money. I told them quite politely that I was really uncomfortable with that idea and that I would owe the money and I can't magic up that kind of money. Things went quiet until a few days later they both turned up at the house. They were nice to start with, but basically started demanding I let them use the card, and they tried to manipulate my mother into guilting me into doing it. I got really angry, and when my brother said I owe it to them because they used to babysit me up until a couple of years ago, I laughed in their faces and walked out. When I came home, I learned they tried to manipulate my dad and he kicked them both out. My mother then tried and he told her to go too, and she is currently staying with my brother and Sil. The only person on my side is my dad, who tells me they're all trying to take me for a ride and they're trying to manipulate me cause I'm young and they think I'm vulnerable. My brother, sister-in-law and mom on the other hand think it isn't a big deal letting someone else use my card. It's really messing with my head, and I just want everyone to stop being in an argument. I have a sister who has a husband who is the poster child of weaponized incompetence. They have 4 kids and she's pregnant. My sister works a full-time job, 40+ hours a week, cleans her entire house, cooks, takes care of all her children without him doing anything. It is seriously mind-blowing that she wakes up at like 4 a.m., cooks breakfast, does chores, gets all of her kids ready for school, takes them all to school and daycare, and all he does is stay home and work. And when his kids get home, after my sister picks them up, of course, he will play with them for a little and play video games until he falls asleep. She actually makes more than him. My fiancé and I had to stay with them for 6 weeks while our home was being renovated, and since we both WFH, we helped her, and it is amazing how much happier she is when she has help. I helped with the kids, and my fiancé even drove her to doctor's appointments. Her husband literally only acknowledges he is a parent when his family is around, then he is a God-fearing, hard-working father of 5. He is the one that wanted more kids. She wanted to stop after her last baby, but he needed more boys. I am seriously concerned not only for her, but her kids as well, because now her oldest is seeing what's happening and trying to help, but my sister is prideful and refuses to let her child do anything. Me and this man have never gotten along. He's been acting like this since their 8-year-old was born. I've tried talking to her about leaving, but she doesn't want her kids to grow up in a broken home. And unfortunately, her experience with our parents' divorce was completely different than mine, so she doesn't understand that a divorce would benefit her kids here because she thinks they need their mom and dad together. Cut to this past weekend, her and her husband threw a pre-Thanksgiving potluck where our entire family plus his was there. I stayed with my sister a few days before because I knew he wouldn't help. So we're at dinner all talking, and I mention we are trying for a baby, and my brother-in-law makes an offhanded comment to him about how hard fatherhood is. And I snapped and said, like you would know. He looked taken aback and asked me what I meant, and I unloaded on him, calling him a pathetic excuse for a man who makes my 8 months pregnant sister do everything for their family. I went off for a solid 10 minutes and he sat there shrinking in his seat. I left. Last night my sister called me and thanked me for standing up for her and told me she appreciated me. Although today I got a very nasty text from him telling me I'm a terrible person and because I lied in front of his family, his mom is angry at him and is moving in with them to help her out, and I've made him the laughingstock of his family. He certainly thinks so. This all went down about an hour ago and my wife is still crying in our bathroom with the door locked. Backstory: we had our son, now 11 months old, while my wife is in residency. She took a few weeks off before giving birth, and then went back to work a few months after, while I transitioned my hours to part-time so that I could stay at home and raise our son. My mom moved in with us shortly after the birth in order to help out, which allows me to get in a few hours of work per day and also not get swamped with taking care of the baby / housework. She's quite old-fashioned and would definitely not prefer this arrangement with me being a stay-at-home dad. But she hasn't said anything to either of us and has been a great help. For anyone unfamiliar with medical residency, it is brutal. My wife has just over a year left. Sometimes she comes and goes for 1 to 3 days and our son is asleep the whole time she's home, which has been happening more as his sleep schedule shifted to sleeping through the night. My mom and I make sure that when she's home and the baby is awake, my wife gets him 100%. I know it's been hard on her, but unfortunately it's just going to be this way for another year. The first big milestone she missed was him rolling over. When she got home, my mom pulled her over to the baby all excited. I thought she was going to tell her, but instead she says, "Julie, you came home right on time. He's been moving about as if he's going to roll over." They both stood there encouraging him, and right on cue he rolls. My wife was elated. She was so worried and guilty about not being there, and she took it as proof that she can still be a present mother while working. So we continued. I send texts over little things she misses through the day so that it's not completely unbelievable. But my wife has been present for every single big milestone. He coincidentally started crawling with her right there. His first words were in front of her, and he began standing, cruising, and walking when she happened to be home. The walking one was difficult. There was a tough 7-day stretch where she just wasn't home during the daytime when he was awake. And his walking went from teetering to walking a couple steps pretty confidently in that time. We put little beanbags in one of his pants pockets so he'd be wobbly and unbalanced, and it looked believable, since he fell after the first step like he was doing a week ago. Yes, it was mean to our poor son, but my wife's face was worth it. Today it all unraveled. So far he can just say mama, dada, and nana. Yesterday he started saying, "Bye, bye." My wife has today off and has been home all morning. My mom and I have been trying to get him to say, "Bye," all day without giving it away that we already know he can say, "Bye." Successfully got him to say, "Bye," to the ducks at the park, and we both gushed over his newest word the whole way home. My wife was using my phone to take pictures of him and began showing my mom at home while telling her about his newest word acquisition. She was swiping through my gallery and saw a video from yesterday and goes, "Oh, you never sent me this one." It was literally like a slow motion film happening in front of my eyes. I had taken the video of him yesterday waving, "Bye, bye." My wife isn't stupid, she figured the whole ruse out pretty much instantly. I've never seen her look so upset and heartbroken before. I couldn't say or do anything to comfort her. Now she's locked herself in the bathroom crying and won't come out. My brother and I do not get on. When we were younger, he'd go out of his way to make my life a living hell. To my parents' credit, they did tell him off for it when they caught him, but they both worked long hours and didn't have the energy to deal with our arguments. This continued into adulthood. He was salty that he failed his college course the first time around. There was a bad argument in our family a while ago, and it all started because I refused to decorate my brother's living room. I won't go into too much detail, but he wanted a pretty hefty discount. I said no, and he threw a tantrum. Instead of being a grown-up and talking to me, he decided to hook up with my toxic ex-girlfriend and the mother of my child. I can't go into a lot of detail about what she was like, but she was not a nice person. She never really bonded with our son when he was born, and I was left to do everything by myself. She eventually walked out on us and refused to have any contact with our son. She'll post on Facebook now and then about her beautiful baby boy to get sympathy votes, but that's about it. I have been a single dad for almost 3 years now and I absolutely adore my son, but it hurts to think that one day he might question why his mom didn't want anything to do with him. How am I supposed to explain that to him? Anyway, it bothered me when my brother told me they'd hooked up together. It hurt even more when he started dating her. It had taken me so long to get over what she did to me and my child, and now my own brother was bringing her back into my life. Yesterday we had a family video call. Parents are high risk and we're not taking any chances. When my brother decided to announce that he and my ex were expecting, I just froze. I didn't know what to do or think. I could feel myself starting to cry a little bit and it got a bit harder to breathe. Eventually, I decided to just congratulate them and then made up some lie about needing to put my son down for a nap and left. I received a bunch of messages from my brother and his GF telling me that I stole their thunder. After I left, my parents and some other family members started worrying if I was okay, and not really focusing on their news. My uncle told me that I should have just been a man and stuck it out instead of making excuses to get out of it. After all, it was expected that our kids would be raised around each other. I feel like maybe I shouldn't have left the call, but at the same time it would have been worse if I'd stayed and had a full-blown panic attack in front of everyone. Some of the family members are split and have argued that I won't be able to avoid my brother and his family forever, but others believe I was in the right to leave that situation. I don't know what to think. My parents aren't happy, but they don't have the energy to deal with all the hassle my brother would cause. They actually cut him off for a little while when he started dating my ex, but he phoned them constantly and, again, can't go into much detail, but he said he'd do something not so good. They keep him at arm's length, but I have told them not to cut contact because of me. If they want to cut contact on their own accord, then that's fine, but I do not want to be the reason that they have to deal with his tantrums. The rest of the family, for the most part, weren't happy about it but accepted it, or pretended to. When they started getting a bit more serious, my uncle, who told me to be a man, thought it was funny. That's just the kind of person he is. Not for my sake, but for the sake of my son. I don't want to put him through all that.